Hello and welcome to Upshift, our podcast on safety and security. Today we are going to talk about the ISO 21434 Clause 7, which is nothing but the Cybersecurity Interface Agreement. In today's session, we are going to talk about what is Cybersecurity Interface Agreement, what goes into a CIA, who is doing the CIA, and which role in an organization is responsible for executing a CIA, and when do we do with the CIA? And finally, we based on our experience, we'll be providing you with some pro tips and tricks. That's what we'll be covering in today's session. What is the CIA? It is one of the work products in the ISO 21434, which is the automotive cybersecurity standard. It is covered as part of Clause 7 and it is named as WP07-01. That's the reference number, or that's the work product number that is given in Clause 7 of the standard. And what exactly is the CIA? It is nothing but an agreement between a customer and supplier. Now, there could be multiple cases, and so this standard talks about the various use cases that are possible. The first use case is that it could be between an OEM and a tier 1. So an OEM could be a car manufacturer like General Motors or Ford or Chrysler, and a tier 1 could be some companies like Magna Electronics, Aptiv, or Visteon. So that's a tier 1. So first and foremost is the agreement between the OEM and the tier 1 on how they are going to do the cybersecurity activities. So that's one use case, and the other use case that they are talking about is the one between a tier 1 and a tier 2. So this could be between, let's say, a tier 1 could be like, let's say, Aptiv, and then they outsource their activities to, let's say, Tata Elxsi, KPIT, to any of these tier 2 companies. And so in such a case, Aptiv will want to execute a cybersecurity interface agreement between them and their tier 2 companies. So that is as well a valid use case, and then this can continue in the chain. So that could be one between a tier 2 and a tier 3, but these are not explicitly called out in the standard, but they talk about these two high level use cases. Now, how important is the CIA? According to me, it is one of the most important work product. Why is it? Because it lays out the entire scope of activities for a particular project. What are the things that you will be doing? What are the things that you will not be doing? All those things are covered as part of the CIA, right? With that, let's look at what goes into a CIA. First and foremost is the SPOC, or the single point of contact in the supplier side and the customer side. These are the people who will eventually be executing this CIA. They will be the first point of contact when there is any clarifications to be had, any questions if you have, if there are any concerns. These are the point of contacts, and so this needs to go into the CIA so that anyone who is reading the CIA is able to understand who they need to reach out if they have questions on that. Okay, so that's the first and foremost thing. And then the CIA is nothing but a whole list of work products that would be completed as part of the development cycle. Okay, and typically the list of work products that go into a CIA are the work products that are laid out in the standard. So in the ISO 21434, there are a whole set of work products. I think if I remember right from the top of my head, it is somewhere around 42 work products that are laid out in the ISO 21434. And so as a first starting point, you need to have these 42 items recorded in your CIA. And once you have done that, for each of the work product, you need to decide whether it is applicable or not for the project. Maybe you decide that, okay, I'm not going to do a certain activity. So for example, you might say that, hey, I will not do the TARA for this program, right? And so you can decide whether a particular work product is applicable or not. So that's the first item. And then for each of the item, you need to decide the RASIC. The RASIC is nothing but the responsible, approve, support, inform, consult. So this is RASIC is a very common terminology now, and so uh, who will be responsible for the work product, who will be supporting, all those things will have to be recorded. So basically you can have typically what we have seen is that we have had two columns, one that says the customer and the other that says supplier, and then for each of the work product we say, okay, who is responsible, who is going to support, or who is going to be, informed about it. So those two columns we will have, and then we need to as well decide about the milestone by which the work product would be completed. So you might say that, hey, I'll be doing this by DV, or you might say that I'll be doing this by PV, which DV by way is the design verification, the product or the process validation. So you might decide on the milestones by which a particular work product would be completed. So that is going to be a critical decision as well. And then you need to as well agree on the format or the delivery type by which the work product would be exchanged between the customer and supplier. So maybe there are certain work products that you feel that are confidential for your organization, and so you say, okay, I'll not be able to directly share this access to the customer, and so you might say, okay, you can only view this in my premise. So for each of the work product, you need to decide what is the delivery type, right? And then finally the status of the agreement. The status is going to be stating that whether it has been approved, whether it is in discussion, because you finally have to decide, or you'll have to get to a point where you agree, but there is going to be some time where you are going to be in discussion about this agreement, and so you need to have a status of the agreement. And then an interesting thing that we saw in the 21434 is that they also talk about the end of cybersecurity support. So this as well, the ISO 21434 says that it should be captured as part of the CA, and so this is a very interesting thing because this is not the case when we look at another standard like ISO 26262. Okay, so this is these are the items that goes into a CIA. Who's responsible? Um, as we talked about in the previous slide, both the customer and the supplier needs to sign the CIA. So typically the initiation of this CIA could be done either by the customer or the supplier, but most of the cases what we have seen is that the supplier initiates the CIA at an RFQ stage itself, the request for quote stage itself, so that they agree upfront with the customer on the work products that they will be talking about. But yeah, that's for another slide. But who is, it could be anyone from the customer or the supplier side, but most of the times we have seen that it is going to be the supplier. And then again, this role, the cybersecurity manager, is not a role that is explicitly mentioned in the ISO 21434, but what we have seen is that most of the organizations have such a role, and so the cybersecurity manager from the supplier and the customer side, they take the initiative to get this activity up and running, right? So that's the who part. And then when typically it should be started at the RFI or the RFQ stage itself, because as I said, the CIA lays out the ground for what work products needs to be done and when it needs to be done, right? And so knowing this information on what are the work products that are expected by the customer helps in defining or identifying the work products and then quoting accordingly. So earlier is always better when it comes to the CAA. If not done at the RFI RFQ stage, it is expected that you do it at the beginning of your development cycle. With that, now we'll get into the pro tips and tricks. What are the things that we have learned by working in a tier 1 company? What are the things that we have learned, and what are the areas where we have paid attention to? So that's what we'll be talking about here. At an organization level, it is always better to have a template created for the CAA. So most of the time it helps because you might have your template pre-filled with most of the work products. So there will always be the case that the customer might say that, okay, I have my own template and I want you to sign the CAA in that, but that is okay. But as far as possible, have your own template, have it pre-filled with most of the information so that the exchange of information becomes much smoother, much easier, right? And the other thing that you want to do at an organization level is the delivery type for the work products. So why is this important? Because you don't want to get into a discussion or a back and forth with the customer on whether a particular work product will be shared as is, whether it will be shared only at premises. So most of the time it is better to define at an organization level what you will be sharing, what you will not be sharing, because at an organization level you will be able to identify which is the confidential information you don't want to share with others. And so in the organizations that we have worked, we have had this done by the quality team so that they have the internal discussions and identify, okay, for this work product this is going to be the delivery type. Again, this is not cast in stone, but having this helps you move really quickly in the initial stages of the discussion. So that's why we believe that this is going to be a good one to do. uh, the other thing that we have done is we have tried to include some of the other work products which are not explicitly called out in the ISO 21434. It could be like, let's say, the static analysis results or the dynamic analysis results. So these things, even though they are not called out, it is going to be needed for you to say that your particular product is cybersecurity compliant. And so it is always a good habit to bring this into your CAA and get the agreement on how the customer wants to look at the results of these. Okay, so that is another thing. And then we always used the CAA as a starting point for our planning activity. So the cybersecurity planning always started from the CIA. So why is this? Because in the CIA, given that you have identified the work products that you will be doing in your planning, you can start thinking about how you will be doing, when, who will be doing, what are the tools that you will require. So with CIA, you know that, okay, out of the 42 work products that I mentioned that are given in the ISO 21434, you might have decided that you will be doing only 30. And so you need to plan only for those 30 work products in your cybersecurity plan. So that is another way we have felt it to be much more efficient to think about how you're going to do the activities. So this is one. And then last but not the least is use the CAA again as a starting point for your cybersecurity case, because you don't want to be having blank rows in your cybersecurity case that says that these are not applicable. So you can always say, hey, I did not have this work product agreed in my CIA, and so I don't want to have that entry in the cybersecurity case. So this is also one way in which you can make your life easy. Okay, so these are some of the tricks that we have used to ensure that the development proceeds smoothly, because finally all these tips and tricks is to ensure that when the when the project gets kicked off, you want to really move fast. You're in a position where you don't want to be the barrier to the actual development. And so these tips, even though small, these are small things, these are easy ones, but these help in eventually getting to where you want. Okay, with that, that's all about uh, this podcast. Thank you for listening, watching. We'll get back to you very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.